Have you ever thought about getting stuck in a time loop? You know, the usual idea of a day repeating over and over again? Very Groundhog's Day. Horrible for the long run, but at least you can vary up the days. Sleep in some days, go to different places. 24 hours is a pretty decent chunk of time to play with. But what if your time loop was only 47 minutes? Now, that is the nightmare version of a time loop. And that is all the time Rue Valley gives you. Well, for the loop. The game itself is gonna take you quite a bit longer. In fact, I spent around 11 real-world hours and countless loops on my quest to find the origin of the loop and how to break out of it. But was Rue Valley worth playing? To begin with, it was sold to me as some sort of a Disco Elysium-like game, which I was quite keen on as I really liked Disco Elysium. And I find this comparison to be very unfair on both games, because they really are not much alike, outside of the art style and some gameplay choices, along with the inner monologues. But even then, the inner monologues are so different, it really is not even close to being the same thing. So please disregard the idea that this is another Disco Elysium, and instead let's talk about what Rue Valley is actually like as a game. You play a fixed character, a man who has come to a motel in Rue Valley for what seems like forced therapy. At the start of the game, you are offered few stat points to assign to define your experience and personality. I went with trying to make what I figure is the closest to myself, as I like going with my instincts and feelings when playing games for the first time. These stats actually do matter, at least a little bit. They will unlock or lock some dialogue choices for you. They are used for several skill checks, and at times may lead you to having to do some extra steps to solve a puzzle. But overall, the personality you choose will not change the final outcome of the game. This is a very linear game with a singular ending. Which honestly I didn't mind too much. I found the story to be interesting and the payoff to be worth it. In this game, dialogue is king. You will spend most of your time talking to people or examining things and reading your inner thoughts on it. And yes, you will be doing a lot of reading. While there is some voice acting in the game, it is far from consistent. I noted a few times when dialogue started voice acted, and then a bit in the middle was not voice acted, and then it ended up being voice acted at the end again. But majority of the game I would say is not voice acted. But the voice acting is good, and it does show up where it matters the most. And where it does, it really gives a wonderful performance. I just wish there was more of it. Instead, there will be a lot of reading as you work your way through the story, which starts with the main goal of figuring out what's going on and getting out of the time loop, but eventually it branches into getting to know the different cast of characters in the loop and trying to figure out why the loop is happening to begin with. And with you being stuck in a loop, you get to know them in a very unique way. Over the course of the game, I got intimately familiar with their routines. Each person is doing something during the loop, from simply manning the reception desk, beating up a vending machine, trying to find a usable Wi-Fi, or heading out on a trip. Each person has their part to play in your story, and you will get to know them quite closely. But with the time loop being so short, you're also very limited in where you can go. The motel is quite remote, leaving you only few places you can visit in the needed time frame. And as you explore more, you slowly start unraveling the mystery of this strange place in the loop, which had me mostly hooked the further I got into it. I think around the time I reached the early midway point of the game, I would not have been able to quit playing it, as the game had pointed out an interesting mystery to me, and now I simply had to figure out why that one thing wasn't working like everything else. But like I mentioned, the loop itself is 47 minutes, but these minutes do not translate directly to real-world minutes. As you walk around an area, the game clock does not move, but as you interact with items or people, or travel to other places, time will pass. This allows you to take things at a pretty relaxed pace, as you can take your time to decide what to do and when to do it. Of course, you won't want to use every minute of every loop, especially later on in the game when you've started having moments where finishing the loop to start a new one is gonna work better for you than trying just to continue. And the game actually has a good way to handle that as well. You have a phone with you, and on this phone is a game. If you have your character play the game, it allows you to skip time forward to pre-discovered times in the area you're in. And these can be things like a character arriving or disembarking, or most importantly, reaching the end of the time loop, allowing you a quick and easy reset. And as you explore the world and meet the people, you start building a mind map. This area holds both information about the characters you've met, but it also is the quest system. Most of the nodes here are circular, but there are occasional square nodes which activate goals for you. So if you want to commit to a goal to start working on it, well, you do that on the mind map using inspiration points. To gather these inspiration points, you just have to explore and experience things in the loop. Early on, these inspiration points slow you down a little bit, so you're forced to explore and make a little bit of choices of which goal you want to work at first. But by the midway point, I had pretty much forgotten the inspiration points existed because you don't have to think about them anymore. You are gonna have plenty for everything you need. The goals themselves will help you move the story forward. It is notable that some of the goals can be failed, but a failed goal doesn't mean that you have fully failed the game. I never found myself to be truly locked out of anything, simply that the game would open up other paths for me to get to, well, where I needed to go. But these goals and exploration is what makes up the main part of the game. The main challenge in the gameplay is actually figuring out how to make things happen. One of the challenges that will point it out to you early on is that you start at the motel every time, but there's no internet there. So if you need to use your phone to check something online, you're gonna have to find a place with an internet connection. There are several different places you can go from the motel. They are not nearby though. While you do have a car, I personally found myself early on plotting each reset to best use the limited time I had. As with the 47 minutes, it is really best to commit to a singular plan. As the more time you waste traveling back and forth, well, the less you are able to do in that loop, and then it might just be worth resetting. Though of course not every loop is gonna be highly focused. I spent several of the loops just wandering around, learning the routines of the people, and figuring out my next point of progress. But most of the time, I went into loops with a singular goal. It could be finding a person at the right time or right place, getting into a room to snoop around, or being able to get online so I could Google some information I needed. These goals become more complicated when they are further away, leaving you smaller amount of time to solve the problem when you reach the location. And while I really did enjoy the concept of this, there was some design choices I did find frustrating. The repeated travel to places while working on a puzzle got really frustrating at times, because there's a little cinematic of driving or walking in between to show the passage of time. As I opened up places, I did start having the option of saying I wanted to go directly to that spot, but the little cutscenes, even the shorter down version, were still left there. And at one point, I did end up having to speak to a character repeatedly through multiple loops, because I was trying to figure out a different way to approach things than the game was offering me, and the repeated travel to that place was less than enjoyable. But there are times where the game also just knows you're going to be working on a singular task somewhere, and it sort of gives you just this montage, which can be quite fun. They actually do use montages several times in the game, really successfully, both in amusing ways and also extremely depressing ways. Because this is a depressing game when you think about it. The game has these wonderful moments where it just hammers down the fact that you are stuck in a loop. And as fun as the concept might be, reliving the same 47 minutes over and over and over again is horrifying. The game's biggest strength is just hammering home the horror of being stuck in these 47 minutes. And the little corner of the world you're able to explore isn't exactly full of happy people either. All in all, this is not a happy game, but it is a decently good one. I would not compare it necessarily to Disco Elysium, because I think that comparison does harm to both games. While they do share a similar art style and control system, and both are definitely based around a mystery, they are simply too different. And while I think Disco Elysium is a magnificent game, I do think Rue Valley is a good one. It is a unique little game with a compelling enough story. It had me hooked early on, and I ended up reasonably content with the ending. My only wish was that I would have liked a little bit more of an epilogue. But the game definitely answered the biggest mystery. So overall it's a fine experience, and I feel personally it was worth playing for me. So if the concept appeals to you, then the full price of the game at release is $30, though there is no harm in waiting for a discount and trying it out later. I definitely feel like I got my money's worth, but I also personally am quite fond of narrative games and tend to prefer shorter stories over longer ones, so an 11-hour playtime felt just right for me. But that's of course just my personal preference. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the game? Would you be interested in trying out Rue Valley? And if you did, what did you think about it? And because I mentioned the game several times in the review, have you ever played Disco Elysium? Let's talk about it down in the comments, and while you're there, do the good YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, comment, all of it really helps with the algorithm. En in the end, all I want to say is tack för att horfa, þau yndislegt dag.